Over the past year, everybody's been asking me the same old question. How do you acquire 700 Jeep Cherokees in your backyard? So what I've done is I've wrote me a script, try not to forget anything. This is about a 20-year story that I'll be telling you. But to be honest, I've collected pretty much all these over the past, probably about 13, 14 years. So I've got a long story to tell you. I'll just start and go down the list and we'll figure out how did I score such an awesome backyard. I'll tell you. Check my script. So if you can tell, we live in the middle of, I wouldn't say nowhere, but we're about 15 miles from town. So growing up, me or my brother really never got into sports or nothing like that. So my dad's theory was as long as he could just keep us busy, we'd stay out of, severe trouble, like staying off drugs, doing the wrong thing, just typical parenting. So back in the day, you could pick up cars before scrap metal, kind of shot up. We was buying Ford Rangers, Buick cars. Sometimes they would give them to you. Sometimes they was $40. Sometimes they was $50. And luckily we had land and we would just drive these through the woods. We'd run them till they crash. We was just kids. This was happening when I started when I was 5 years old maybe. Brother's 4 years older than me, so he was always driving. And we just always kept busy just piddling with cars in the woods, stuff like that. I think I've actually got a video when I got to about 10 or 12 years old. We got about an 84 model Dodge, was it 1500, 150 Ram truck. The guy drove it to us for $300, said the transmission was bad, and my dad went out there, changed the fluid and filter, and I think he welded the rear end up. He pulled the fenders out with a tractor, and man, we mudded that truck for years. And to a kid, that was just all you could dream for. So we had that. Well, then got a little older. We started getting into dirt bikes, four-wheelers, stuff like that. And we go through we had these kind of four-wheelers. I had mud riding, we had dirt bikes, we jumped hills. Our front yard was basically a motocross track. So that was awesome. I think when I got to about 16 years old, 15, 16, I rode a YZ250F pretty much every single day of my life that I could. Anyway, I've actually got a picture of it that'll lead to the next story. Dad was always taking us on these adventures, just see the country, go ride to Arkansas. Never went like too exotic, but we would go to, 6 or 8 hour trips to ride to these different places. This was before internet. Well, this was before social media. You didn't know about stuff. There was a place called Wheeling in the Country, and I caught wind of it. I believe one Saturday we took off up there, was riding dirt bikes and such, and had a good time, loved it. And if any of y'all knows this guy, I would like to find him because he's the reason all this happened. When you pull out of Wheeling in the Country on the main road right there, I'll try to put the name of the road. When you start back towards the highway, the first house on the left right there, as we was leaving, there was a Jeep Cherokee, which I'll show you, had been rolled over. And it was just a street vehicle. So this boy, that was his grandpa's house. He lives on down the road. I'm not going to give out his personal information because I ain't met the guy in 20-something years. But he lived up on the hill there. This was his grandpa's house. As we pulled out, we seen the Jeep Cherokee. And I was kind of shocked. My dad said, "You want to look at it?" So, of course, how would you turn it down? We pulled in there and get there. And like I said, it had been rolled over. Somebody had cut the roof out of it. Just, I don't really know why. But I think they was asking, honestly, I think they was asking $600 for it. Had a set of 31s on there. And maybe we got him down to $500. Don't exactly remember, doesn't change the story. So we agreed on a deal. Went home, unloaded all our stuff, came back to get the Jeep. Well, turns out this guy had a parts Jeep for $200. So we wound up with a Jeep Cherokee and a parts Jeep. Didn't have much left on it. And that's where the story takes off. Let's go check out the first Jeep. And then that's what's crazy. If you've followed me, you've seen this Jeep. You just don't know that you've seen it and you don't know what it is. Let's go check it out. First off, I gotta check my script off. First Jeep, let's go see it. I'm actually just realizing something that's so ironic. I've never paid attention. Here in a second, it'll make completely sense, but this is amazing. Anyway, here you go. This was the very first Jeep that started everything. It was complete. I'll get to that part of the story, but see if we can get over here. Like I told you, the roof, I guess they cut it out with a torch, skill saw, not really sure. But we drove it around. Oh my gosh, this is so good. This windshield here, I was a kid. Like I said, at this given point, I would have been in the neighborhood of 12, 13 years old. So did some crazy things, just roll with it. So it didn't have a windshield. My theory was I had this windshield right here, and going down the road, if you needed a windshield, if he's on a trail, you could flip it over. I had these things right here that it would sit on for a roof. Good buddy of mine, as we was driving down the road, reached forward and flipped it up, thinking that it would come over and we get some fresh air. It come around and whopped him across the top of the head. It's a true story, can't make that up. Dad decided we needed a roll cage. He actually welded this with a torch. We didn't even have a welder. So he hand welded it with a torch, probably burned a lot of stuff. And like I said, we was just kids. We was making just crazy things to go along there. I think at one point it had a hand throttle. Somewhere I had a cable rigged up. No, Justin took it off. I had a cable rigged up to go around, and it had a mirror that would actually pop out so you could see the front tire, what it was gonna bounce off of. So naturally we tried to make a lift kit. Let's see. I don't even know what this stuff is. And then check out the shock spacers. Y'all have been making fun of me, but I've been doing that for 20 years. It had the vacuum disconnect, so we did end up welding it, and we could undo the vacuum disconnect for just a little bit of better drivability. And I don't think we ever got wild in this with kids, but this thing compared to the Dodge truck was absolutely night and day. That's where I think the whole love for the Cherokee fell into place. And that's where the story just took off. I'm gonna come back to that and show you something, the ironic part, but this is where the story took off. We bought that one for a little bit of nothing, and then we bought the parts Jeep. Well, this was before Craigslist. This was hard to believe 20 years ago, but this was newspaper stuff. So Dad was reading the newspaper, finding these things for, you know, a little bit of nothing. I mean, a couple $100, and most she was paying for a run and driving was like 600 bucks. Naturally, over the years, some of them got scrapped, some of them got gone, sold, that kind of deal. I do have just a few that we started with, but that's where it's going, is we was enjoying these things. Dad was supporting a hobby that we enjoyed and was very cheap on him. So he kept on buying them up until about, I'd say we was about 15, 16, starting to grow up. And that's where he cut the line, and that's where the story will pick back up down the road. This one, I know we've had this one since day one. Busted transfer case. I actually put the motor in a Jeep I sold. Dude tried to sue me because he tried to wreck it or something. I don't remember, but yeah, maybe it was a wreck and it busted the transfer case. So I've had it since what I'm gonna call day one. This is, when I say day one, I'm talking the first few years of this whole Jeep Cherokee fad. This one, oh my gosh, I wish we had cameras for it. This was just a rust bucket that run and drove. The amount of fun we had for a couple $100 in this thing is just unbelievable. We jumped. There was this rutted out road this farmer didn't want us to go down because he dug ditches. We thought it was hilarious. Didn't have cameras. We had a video recorder like VHS, but we would get to the bottom of the hill, put it on the floor, and go up through there just jumping these ruts and terrace and all that. And the thing would just take it. It never complained. We never broke nothing. We'd bounce off the dash. I mean, this thing was amazing. Finally one day, the motocross track in the yard we had, there was about a 50-foot tabletop that was like supercross ramp steep. Dex tried it, it didn't work out. I think we broke the rear drive shaft and everything was so rusty we couldn't fix it. So again, nothing special, it's just a Jeep. We just bought it, run and drove. And I'm trying to figure out At one point it was signed by somebody famous. Now I can't read that if you want to try to read it. But this Jeep got turned into storing some metal in. This one, pretty good story on it. How we acquired it, I don't know. Don't matter. I think this was probably like a $350 one. And it was just a bone stock Jeep like normal. Welded it all up. And Dex got a bright idea that I wanted to put 36s on a stock Cherokee with no lift. Naturally, I started it and didn't finish it like most of my projects. There's honestly nothing wrong with the Jeep. It's just been sitting. Funny story, Dad bought that winch. I'll have to ask him. I'm pretty sure he bought it new in '84. I'll ask him how many vehicles that's been mounted in, but that's been around for a while. I don't know exactly how many Jeeps are down here, but it doesn't change the story. I'm gonna show you one more and then continue on, and this is a true story. So I bought this Jeep, and I don't even remember what I did to it, to be honest, but I think I paid $300 for it. I spray painted the door right there. Sold it for $1,000. I thought I was freaking rich. I hid that money for years. And at the time, $1,000 was worth a lot more, but finally, I think they blowed the motor up several years ago. I think I bought it back for $100 at the time. Again, one of the projects Dex never finishes. I just wanted this huge lifted Jeep, and you can tell what kind of craftsmanship went into it. The funny story, of course I never finished it, is Dad finally got mad and said, get it out of my shop. Well, I realized his shop is pretty short. I couldn't get it out of there. So we had to let all the air out of the tires. If you notice, the roof rack's off there. And we took come-alongs and like tied the suspension down till we could just get it out of the shop. So it'll probably sit there forever. I'll probably never finish it. So this is the first Cherokee we ever had. Now keep this in mind. It's a 91 model, and it's the Laredo with electric seats. Even if you look down there, probably can't see, but it's got electric mirrors. This is one of the very few years that 91 that had a bunch of bells and whistles. Check this out. So I don't really know why, but when I was about 13, my parents was like, we need to start looking for your vehicle. They was asking, what kind do you want? What kind of question is that? You know, kind of a no-brainer. So we went looking for a Jeep Cherokee, and guess what we ended up with? We ended up with a Jeep Cherokee. I'll link the video below. I tell the full story on this Jeep. I'm not gonna drag this one out in this video, but bought it out of a field. I think the guy just died, did real estate out of it. And of course I bought it bone stock. I did this, I've done a bunch of stuff. So that's actually a pretty decent video. It'll be below. But again, this one was the Laredo. It's ironically a 91 model just like the other one. It's the same color. It had the same electric seats. I'll throw in a video of why them don't work no more. Then I changed this out here. It had mirrors too, but they didn't work. I'm gonna study the VIN numbers because this Jeep and that Jeep are basically identical Jeeps. And it's so ironic because that was our first Cherokee ever, and this was my first Cherokee ever. The odds of that ever happening, crazy, crazy. Check my list. So that red Cherokee I just showed you, I'm pretty sure we paid, I honestly think we paid $600 for it. Times are coming along. It was actually a pretty decent Jeep at the time. So we bought it, got it running, fuel pump, I don't remember what else. And then we was driving it just bone stock. Well, my brother, a little bit older, he had a job. He's like, let's build a lift kit for it. So we went, got some custom U-bolts made, this, that, and the other. Then this was again my Jeep to drive. I was probably 14 at the time. Well, he was older, had his license, so he had a Dodge Dakota. I think Mom and Dad paid around $6,000–7,000 for. But we had acquired my Cherokee, and he ended up driving it more than he did his truck. So I think I've got a picture. He ended up with like a 90 model black Cherokee. He could afford a lift. He bought a 6-inch rough country, that and other. He wound up with a couple spares for parts and all that stuff. So all these Jeeps were just acquiring and getting stuck behind my parents' house. So drop back, I think my parents knew that I wouldn't say wild, but they probably didn't trust me, to be completely honest. So this Cherokee I just showed you, they had about $800 in. That was my daily driver. I drove it for about 6 or 8 months. One day, my parents was like, do you want a new vehicle? Well, shoot, yeah. So we got in, went and looked around, and I kind of regret it. If I find a picture, I found a 99 limited Cherokee. Leather at the time was freaking mint, but at the time it was the gold color. I didn't like it. Well, next we went and found not this Jeep, but basically this same Jeep. I think I've got a picture of it, and I drove it for several years, and it was the 4.7, and I'm not gonna get on that too detailed, but kept dropping a lifter, this, that, and other. So in the meantime, Dex finally got him a job, and he found a 5.9. Naturally, I had to have it, so I bought it. So now I've got the 5.9. No, let me back up. Let's go find it. So during high school is when I acquired the the WJ I just showed you. By then, the red Jeep had already been turned into a dedicated trail rig. Well, after like the 3rd time of dropping the valve, I think the mechanic was just sticking it back in there. My dad kept accusing me of blowing it up, and turns out it was just a piece of crap. So I had to have something to drive, and I'll be honest, I didn't have a lot of money. This is what I wound up with in high school. This is my ride. And as you can imagine, I've modified it some, but this is what I drove. The stupid thing was actually fast. It was a Renix with a 5-speed, and I had some fun with it, but I admit it's a piece of crap. 2-wheel drive. Wound up selling the motor, regret. I think I actually own the motor again, but one day decided it needed a sunroof, so we put some wing nut sunroof. Had one speaker laying there. So yeah, that's what I had. I think I bought it, I'll be honest, I can't remember. But the mechanic kept that Jeep at that point like forever, and that's when I bought that one. Wound up, I'll tell you, I'll go show you my 5.9, but I wound up buying a 5.9. That mechanic kept it 4 years and never fixed it. Wound up getting it sold to WJ. Kind of regret it, but still part of the story how I got here, kind of money to coming back at me. So let's go check out the 5.9. So at this point, I'm 18, fresh out of high school. I get a job at Caterpillar, making like $8.20. I've always been decent with money, don't blow it on stupid stuff. Anyways, I found this 5.9, and I think this fender had like one bad spot where they don't change the story. I bought it, $1,700. I was driving it back and forth to work, getting like 8 miles a gallon. Anyway, kept it. Finally, 1 year tough trucks rolled around, and again, I'm a kid. I think the win was like $200, so I was like, this thing will freaking win tough trucks. I go out there and just, I'll be honest, it got away from me. I jumped a hill. Again, this is what sucks about the story, is there's no pictures or videos from back then because we all had flip phones. But I jumped it and it landed smack dab on the nose, caved all this in to pretty much demolish the Jeep. So what a dummy I was, but I can't change the story. I think there's a picture where I tried to build some exotic idea out of this. Never happened. Let me check my script. Now is pretty much where the story starts. I'm 18. I kept a job for 8 months. Luckily, not gonna get political, luckily Obama got in presidency and I lost my job. Drew unemployment for a while. I did mechanic work with another guy, worked for another buddy of mine, actually still a good friend of mine. Was working for him, just cash on the side jobs. And we had built this shop, me and my brother kind of split it together. And this is where I kind of understood what I was doing. I was unemployed, and somehow people was hitting me up. It's like, you got a rear end for a Cherokee? I was like, well, shoot, yeah. So again, I'll be honest, I don't think I've paid for any of the Cherokees other than the 5.9 and the Comanche. But any of the parts Jeeps, I hadn't paid a dime for them. So these people was hitting me up needing just parts, and I was selling them. I was like, hey, this works. So one day I just woke up and told the boy I was working for him, I was like, I want to go somewhere. So I didn't come into that job. Didn't have crap to my name as far as money wise. It's hard to think. It's a long time ago. So in the back of my mind, I was just thinking that I could do something with these Cherokees, make money. It was a freaking struggle. I pretty much slept all day because I had nothing to do, and I didn't have any money to do anything with. So that was just kind of throughout the story. But again, no pictures of them. I needed some money to make. So I found a Jeep in Memphis on South Parkway. So me, by myself, went to Memphis and bought this 4.7. I actually had a double trailer, wound up buying another parts Jeep. So I brought him back, and I had this 4.7 Jeep, had a decent motor. I knew they brought pretty good money. So I pulled it out, put it on Craigslist at the time, and actually found a guy that wanted it. He brought me a Dodge truck to put it in, and I think we did $700 and a piece of junk Jeep, like junk. And I traded for that, and that's literally what I built off of. But after I bought the first Jeep for parts, he brought me the motor to swap, or the truck to swap the motor into. I took, before the Jeep, I think I had $2,200 to my name. I bought the Jeep, and I spent every single dollar I had to go buy tools to swap this motor to make my first dollar. And I mean, when I say I don't think I overdrafted, but I went to AutoZone and kept adding them in the cart till I was maxed out. It was a stupid move, but it's a smart move at the same time. So I knew what I was doing, and that's literally where the story starts building. Is, again, didn't really have nothing to do, so I would buy a Jeep here that was cheap, and I would take apart from the one Justin or my dad had bought, fix and sell. So that part was kind of a very slow story, like nothing was happening, and just kept building. So just like this shop right here, this wall was completely blank. There was absolutely nothing. I started stacking motors, good and bad, because I didn't have nowhere to put them. I mean, this was all I had. So that's obviously a long story, but what I was gonna say is I didn't have lifts like you're seeing here. So when I need to take a Jeep apart, I just had this little spot here, and if you can see, I'm actually in the process of redoing some of this concrete. I would just take axles out, slam it on the floor, and then you can see these marks. I think I made a short video the other day, and I would just drag them. Didn't have that concrete there. And what it was is, if you see there's a ditch right about there, that was my property line. I didn't have anything over there. So go back there, same principle, don't have pictures. All this was filled in, even when I'm standing on, but I would drag the Cherokees out down this hill. I actually had some sitting right here, and I would drag them down to essentially where those axle racks are. And I started right there, and I went and I went, and I had about 15, and then I realized that was going to fill up, and it's kind of hard to see, but like I said, that would be the property line, and right along my finger where the grass is growing, that was a field. And I've dozed that off 3 times to add more room because I didn't have that field over there. And finally it kept filling up, and I was so lucky to get that land over there, because I don't know, that filled up at like 300 Jeeps and was just so congested. Luckily I got that. That's helped out so much. But I will say, as I started the video, I've always had supportive parents, but it's never been like, here's money, don't pay me back. It's never been nothing like that. But my dad, I think, felt bad for me because he saw me dragging these Jeeps around. So he did buy me this tractor. I think it was like 2,200 bucks back then. And of course I've spent more maintenance on it than we actually paid for it. But that's just where I started. So now I've got a SkyTrack, I got a Bobcat, backhoe, I got all the equipment, I can move this stuff around. Just had to start at the very bottom, and I've built my way up. Now I've got an established shop, I've got a handful of tools to do some jobs. Basically I did any kind of mechanic work I could. So that carried on. I finally got to the point where I hated working on Fords and I hated working on Toyotas. So I canceled them out. A few years went by. I finally one day drew the line. I said, The name of my business is Dex's Jeeps and Salvage. I said, I'm just gonna quit and only work on Jeeps. So I'm still buying and collecting them. I'm trying to get the story straight. I don't want to mess the story up. So I'm down to just doing Jeep mechanic work. And finally, mechanic work is so freaking stressful. I don't know if you've ever done it, but it's hard. Finally one day, I was like, I'm just done. I said, this is the part where people get mad at me, especially locally, but I'm still buying Jeeps because I understand I buy them to either refix and sell, or I buy them to part out. And I know I'm buying them as a good business move, but as long as I'm stuck in the shop changing brakes and doing, you know, common mechanic work, I'm just shooting myself in the foot by buying. We'll just go look at all the Jeeps that I've bought. All these Jeeps you see, and there's more I'll show you in a second, these are ones that basically I've been stuck in the shop doing mechanic work to make money, to buy these to fix and resell to make money, but I'm not fixing any of them. I'm just buying more and more and more to fix and sell because I know it's a smart move, but I have no time to do anything with them. So there's where I drew the line one day. I said, I'm done doing public mechanic work at all. It's like, it makes people so mad, but if you just look around, all these Jeeps, I mean, I've paid money for them, and that's what sucks. I have to pay dearly because people know that I will, but I've paid for every one of these out of pocket. They're all sitting there waiting for me to do something with them, but I can't because I'm stuck in the shop working on stuff. So if you got a mechanic that you trust, tell them thank you. That's one of the reasons I started YouTube, was I've obviously gained a lot of knowledge, and that way through videos and shorts and all that, I'm sharing what I've learned. That's, at the moment, that's the only thing I know that I can do to help people out, in a sense. I'm pretty sure it's this lot. I'm pretty sure I can dig up a picture, but I kept on buying and buying it. I was so stressed out. I had 38 Jeeps that I had bought and essentially not touched, is what I'm gonna say. I finally wound up with an employee, but now there's give or take 100 over here. Then not gonna get too detailed, but I'm gonna say there's another 300 over here that I've literally just bought and haven't done anything with. So at first I was stressed out about it, with it ending up with so many Jeeps, but now I just kind of use the theory, as long as there's money in my pocket, yeah, I don't even stress over them. I can stress over them buying them, but just is what it is. You know, it's money in the bank. It probably honestly has more potential than just money sitting in the bank. I mean, I can actually make money off these. So at that point with 38 Jeeps, I was stressed out, wound up, I got an employee. So a buddy of mine's son hit me up. He was 16, just didn't want to work in fast food or anything. He's like, do you got anything I could do? At that point I was like, man, I got 38 Jeeps to take apart. He said, heck yeah. So he worked for me, and he was really good. I had zero complaints with him. And then my brother, which was at Caterpillar, was just showed up one day. That's a different story. Quit his job. Well, then he comes to me for a job, and we'll save that story for the machine shop another day. But so now the young boy's working for me, and then Justin's working for me, and I think they was the ones that noticed, like, won't you fix and sell some of these Jeeps? So that carries on, and employees are stressful. Even though they're as good as gold, it's just stress. But we was fixing and selling these Jeeps, and at one point I think I counted, like, it was very close to 30 that we had fixed up, ready to sell. This is when the economy kind of crashed again. And that's what I tell people. I was like, I felt like a drug dealer. I said, my mom had multiple and she was selling. Every friend that I had, a close friend, I was letting them sell them like they were theirs. And I said, whatever you can sell it for, 10%. I was like, this is what I kind of want for it. So I had Jeeps in places I didn't even know. I had them parked in town. And that's where I woke up one day and I was like, I can do this myself. So Justin, I know, was going to the machine shop by then. I think he had, the young boy working with me was now 18, 19. I told him, I was like, you're not fired. I said, I would like to see you get a good job. And he's got a better job now. I said, anytime you need to come back for a job, I said, I got you covered. I said, I just don't want the stress. that's where I kind of made the decision. I was like, every single Jeep you see this side, then the other side of the road, all these are 100% paid for. They ain't eating nothing. Luckily, I've been 100% debt free since I was 26 years old. I checked out of debt, just kind of lived the low life, got everything paid for. So I mean, now I just sell parts and I fix them up at my own convenience. Is there stress involved? Obviously, but compared to what I used to do, it's like night and day difference. So that's kind of what enables me to do the YouTube. Is I live a boring enough life that I make enough money that I don't have to work my butt off to make payments on vehicles that I don't need and all that kind of stuff. So different. That's for another day's business perspective. I guess we'll talk about that another day. So yeah, they just sit there, and this is kind of like my little gold mine. I just kind of pick off of them and use these to fix the other ones. And it's what I said, I've learned that fixing all those up with the parts that are over here and then selling a few parts here and there is slower money, but it's way better than what I started doing. I don't remember exact date, but I think they had a junkyard over there. Buddy of mine showed up with his buddy to buy something, and the guy walked in, he's kind of used some choice words there. He's like, you must have one heck of a balloon note. And I was like, what? And he's like, a balloon note. I said, what is that? And I don't think I asked him. I went and looked it up, and you may have to look it up yourself. But I think it's where you just borrow a lump sum from the bank and buy whatever you want and make a monthly payment or something. But I was just sitting there like, no, I've been smart. Buy what you can when you can, that kind of deal. Blah, 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 blah. That's another business video maybe one day. We've almost got this checked off. I think there's one or two more things. I hope this video is not too long. I hope it's a good story. I still got to explain where I buy them. So, I think we've got everything crossed off except maybe the one question. I guess the main question is, where do I buy them from? Number one, I don't do online car auctions. I could, and I've thought about it, but seeing the fees and the things that's added to them, and number one, I don't have to. Just marketplace. I think what got it started, my mom worked a desk job, and she would just sit on her phone and go through and find them on Marketplace and Craigslist and all this stuff. So she was finding them, I was buying them, and now I've got such a big name that they pretty much come to me. So you'll get people from other states be like, do you want to buy, like right now I'm supposed to be going to Alabama to buy 9 from one guy. And then I'm pretty sure I've told a story real quickly. A buddy of mine in Memphis had a 25-acre junkyard, couldn't find employees, downsized, and he sent me a picture of 3 Cherokees. He's like, do you want to come buy some Cherokees? Sure. So I carried some money over there, and I know I've got pictures of this, and wound up, it's somewhere around 200 of them I bought from him, but this is where I was going with the story. All of them was going to scrap. Every single one of them would have been crushed if it wasn't for me. And like, I can look out here and pick out, I can't tell you how many of these, I'm gonna say 95% would have been scrap metal if it wasn't for me. And that's where all these people make me so mad. They'll comment that I'm hoarding them and doing all this stuff. It's like, y'all don't understand how many I've fixed up, put back on the road, how many other Jeeps I've kept on the road, and then all these would have been ground up for scrap metal. And I can't tell you, there's about 10 guys. Their job is literally, they buy these junk cars for a couple $100, cut the catalytic converters off of them, and scrap them. And they actually make good money at it. And I've hooked up with a bunch of them. I was like, if it says Jeep across it, I said, I'll pay, $100 more than scrap price. So right there, per year, I can't tell you how many I save from going to scrap metal, on top of the ones that I fix up. I've double checked my whole thing here, and I don't have anything left wrote on there. I'm sure there's something I'm missing. One of the funniest things is when I started, I was 18, 19, and I looked very young at that age. People would show up, and I would walk out there to greet them. They would literally walk past me, and I'm looking at them like, what are y'all doing? And they're saying, I'm going to talk to your boss. And they'd walk in the shop and look around, and I'd sit there like, it's just me. That was so funny because I'll, most people at that age don't start a business, but I was only a go-to person. It was just kind of funny. This video is kind of important to me, so I will probably read every comment and I will try to comment back to every one of them. If I don't, my dad probably will, or somebody. I guess the main question is, how does somebody my age acquire this many vehicles? I'm curious if it's a record. I highly doubt it is. I feel like it probably is for a specific make. There's so many things I could add to this video, but I'll add this one part and then we'll go. Growing up, I never met him. I heard there's a guy in my hometown that had 87 Toyota pickup trucks. I was just unbelievable astonished that somebody could have that many of the same make. And then here, 14 years later, he had 87, I've got 700. That's something to be proud of. And that's probably my ending scene, is how did I get here? Hard work, really hard work. Through all these years, I knew I could get to somewhere if I worked my butt off. And I'm talking, anybody can testify for me, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I mean, there's times that I fell asleep on the creeper doing jobs in my earlier years. You know, it'd be 4 in the morning, I'm doing a transmission swap. But I knew where I wanted to be in life. And I finally got there. And it's honestly like a dream come true, because now I still have to work. Like, I have really good work ethic. If you can tell, my shop, I've been out of it for a week or two doing epoxy floor. And I'm still working. I'm outside doing yard work, doing stuff like that. But I'm like dying to get back to work. So I don't think there's much left to be said. If there is, I'll do like a short video to follow up on it. And what I just got done saying, if you look right there in the box, is $2,000 worth of epoxy floor. I'm eager to get started on it, and we can get back to doing my regular videos. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. I'm hoping this video ain't too long. I don't think it's that bad, but maybe I'll be an inspiration to somebody. I didn't think I was gonna say it in this, but there's so much potential out there for working people. Just nobody seems to want to work anymore. I don't know why. You can have nice things in life. You just got to work for them. Appreciate it. Hope I didn't miss anything. Have a good day, and have a good day. Thank you.